Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, episode number 18. Thank you for that intro, Brian. That's an original creation, music and all, from the studios of Brian Siskin, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, everybody that's been on the audio podcast knows that that's sort of the little audio stinger that's kind of our, I guess, thing. Funny little side note that's not of interest to anybody, but that music or whatever you hear is actually something I did for, as you know, anybody in the creative fields, right? Like you do a lot of spec work that you end up getting not paid for, or you don't get the gig or whatever, or something happens. It's actually something I did for a film that I was doing the score for that ended up not happening. That would have been a pretty big deal. But anyway, so I thought, well, I'm going to get some use out of this stuff. So that's what that is.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, from the archives.
Well, I love it. Thank you for doing that. And we're glad everyone's with us tonight. This is going to be an interesting episode. Before we jump into the topic, though, we got a bunch of stuff to remind people about and an announcement that I don't want to bury the lead. So we're going to get all this stuff out of the way at the top. But if you're listening to us on the recorded audio podcast or watching us tonight, do take a minute, if you can, subscribe to the audio podcast and even leave us a review at the places your podcasts are from. It is surprising. We talk about the algorithms a lot, and it's not like we don't have aspirations to be like the million subscription podcast here, but it does help other people like us find the content, right? It's just another way for other people to like kind of join the community. So if you can take 3 seconds to subscribe to it on your favorite podcast source, and then even leave a review. We've been picking those up. We're up to 17 ratings now, which is pretty good. And some really cool comments, some names I recognize in there from some of our audience. So
that's on the Apple podcast.
Yeah, it looks great. So thank you to everyone who's taken time to do that. It's very helpful. And if you're here right now, also, it's always a good idea to share this on your social media. Even now, if you want to share the live link, the YouTube link, it helps bring other people into the fold here, especially on Podcast Tonight, which we think is a great example of how our podcast is kind of designed to work, which is interactive and feedback from you. And so the topic tonight, your top 5 bucket list destination places to fly. This could be a great one. We'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on that. So even now, as we're getting started, you can start popping some of those in chat and having side conversations amongst yourselves and just kind of enjoying that.
Yeah, and I guess we can issue a challenge, right? Like there's a lot of these destinations that I think we'll have in common, and we haven't shared our list with each other yet, but I'm sure that there'll be at least one that's in common. And there's a lot of pretty normal ones that people want, not to diminish them, but what the challenge is here, I think, and what I want to get, I want this episode to be something where I can look back on it myself and just reference what people have been putting in the chat, because you're always looking for more inspiration or more ideas, and so the challenge, I think, for people to come up with something unique, because there's a lot of the Grand Canyon, of course, whatever, which is not to diminish the Grand Canyon. It's the largest of the canyons as far as I know. So it's a good canyon. It's a good canyon.
It's my favorite canyon. Huge. It's huge. That's a great idea. It's a great way to kind of look back on it and see what others have said. And one more piece of housekeeping before I've been dying to share this with everybody. So episode 19, which will be recorded 2 weeks from tonight, July 20th, 2022 at 8:00 p.m. Eastern. We've just been working on it and have confirmed we have a guest coming up on that episode, and it will be RH from one of my favorite aviation podcasts on the internet, Opposing Bases, who's going to join us for an hour to talk about all things air traffic and how it relates to pilots. RH is also a pilot as well, and their podcast is great, and they do a really good job of kind of working through some of those things. But it'll be a great chance to get questions answered and just to talk to a controller for an hour. Just kind of answer questions. It's going to be a really good time. They're great. It's a great show if you haven't checked it out, but we're super excited to have RH with us.
Man, that's awesome.
On the 20th.
So much fun. Oh, and by the way, just before I forget, while I like to think that I have good ideas, really anybody that produces or does anything is really just good at borrowing other people's ideas. And so I want to make sure I give due credit. I was actually chatting with Crazy Mike, aka Bearded Aviator, and said, "What would you like us to talk about?" And this is what the topic that we're doing tonight is all credit to Bearded Aviator. That was his idea.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the idea. That is,
if this episode stinks.
Yeah, exactly. I only have 3 on my list, but I'll work through those as we go. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to start rattling off some of ours? Do you want to kind of alternate some of ours, and then we'll jump in and start kind of talking about stuff from the chat?
Yeah. And I think, without abandoning again, our audio podcast, because I mean, honestly, it's doing really well, and I really want to make sure we're not giving so many visuals that we're leaving those folks behind. So, but it'd be cool to maybe pop up some of these to give a reference, because some of these might be just words. It's like this place, but it might be cool to kind of see it, or at least describe it a little bit. But what I'm interested in also in talking about is, it's not just about the destination. If I think about the things that I came up with, it's about why am I choosing this? There's different criteria, I think, for, top 5 destinations. A lot of it, of course, is, scenery or this and that. But I think that when I was coming up with my list, it was also about different ones kind of met different challenges that I want to give myself, in terms of different types of flying or whatever. So there's a lot of different sort of criteria, I think, that can go into a bucket list, and this can be pretty unique to people. It's not just about this sort of generalized, the coolest places to fly, it's right. So anyway, but yeah, we can go back and forth. If you'd like, I can kick it off. And this is one that I think a lot of people, at least in this part of the country, probably are aware of, but I just haven't been there. And so, and maybe Chris, if you want, you can throw it up on ForeFlight or something. But so Dauphin Island, Alabama. It's just a airstrip in the middle of it's like landing on an aircraft carrier. It's off the coast of Alabama, and it's basically an airstrip in a little island, and you can go and ride bikes to the crab shack kind of thing. But there's nothing really there. It's not far from the mainland or anything, but it's just a remote kind of airstrip that's just an amazing approach.
You're gonna have to help me find it.
Dauphin is how you spell it. Now, as far as the airport identifier, I mean, you're really asking a lot here.
No, I mean, it's still harder. It's a little harder to find.
Is it 4 Romeo 9?
Never mind, I found it. Wow. Yeah, we'll put that up too, so we can talk about it as we go.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody in the chat has been to Dauphin Island. I know we've got some people in Alabama and points south, but it looks pretty amazing. And if you went to satellite view, you can kind of really get a sense of just how it really is just sort of an airstrip and kind of nothing else. But that's not a very elaborate one. It's, that's why it's number 5 on my list, but it is achievable. It's pretty reasonable for me to get to from here ish.
That's cool.
But yeah, so, Dauphin Island, that would be my number 5.
Very nice. I would say I'm going to go in order. I have been making a list. My daughter has been on me about this one a lot. Mine are going to be a little less, I think, less intentional than yours, and maybe a little more touristy. Not touristy. A little bit more, a little lack of intention. But she was very bummed that I went to Oshkosh without her last year, and we can't go this year because we have conflicting plans. But I would say my number 5 would be to fly into Oshkosh at Oshkosh, like for real at the air show. So I think she wants to do it next year, and I think we were going to probably try to do it next year to go all the way for that.
After seeing your last video that you just published, because I am a patron, by the way, I would just assume you'd want to be in like an actual contributor to the air show at Oshkosh, considering the approach that you did at Billy Mitchell on the coast of the Outer Banks. And Cecilia's response to it is incredible. So I can't wait for people to see that.
Yeah, it'll be this weekend. It was a low approach. It was categorically a low approach. Yeah, that's all.
It's going to be a good low approach when you look to your passenger and you say, are you ready?
Yeah. Are you ready? And then she said, that was a little wild. And I said, I'm sorry, was it too wild? Yeah, I think Oshkosh, it was cool to be there just as a visitor. Like we flew to Milwaukee and then drove in basically every day. We didn't stay in Milwaukee. We were somewhere close, me and a buddy of mine and his dad, but the experience was awesome. I saw a lot of people with their airplanes doing the camping thing and just completely fully immersed in the experience. And then just to think about how many videos we've all watched of the Fisk arrival and flying that with a big line of planes. Like I didn't feel ready last year, and it was probably a good call. But I feel like by this time next year I'll certainly be ready for that kind of a challenge. So so that's my number 5, I guess, would be Oshkosh. One Dog Geek.
It is the gauntlet, right? Oshkosh is the gauntlet.
Yeah, I mean, between that and Sun and Fun, which is getting crazy, but it's like a challenge. One Dog Geek says, have you looked up Cherokees to Osh or Cessna to Osh? Yes, I have definitely. I've seen both of those groups that do those mass arrivals, which I also think that would be super fun. I don't know if we're going to do that route the first time or if we're going to kind of go it on our own pace. But both of those are super cool groups that come in. I mean, by the droves of airplanes together, which is pretty cool.
Well, I'll go ahead and give you my number 4, and this one, and it's fitting that you just published your Outer Banks Part 2 is about to hit the YouTubes, but what it doesn't include is what we didn't make it to, which was part of the plan, which is to go to Tangier Island.
Yeah.
And that is still on my bucket list. And it's funny to think about. I think it's a good lesson, right? It's like you might get so close to your bucket list destination and it just can't happen, for whatever reason. And you just got to keep trying. So it's not as linear as I'm going to pick this destination and now I'm going to go.
Right.
You may get there, you may not. But Tangier Island, and for those who don't know the history of it and where it is right now and in its history and time, it's disappearing island. It's just I don't know. It's a really neat sort of isolated culture that's in the Chesapeake Bay, and beautiful flight and approach, and you can get out and get some amazing seafood. And this community is what I think maybe it's eroded or sunk into the ocean maybe in the last 20 or 30 years almost completely, and then now they're estimating that it might have 20 or 30 years left.
Yeah, they're losing. They say they're losing 20 feet a year.
It's crazy.
Are just slowly being eroded away.
Maybe I should put it higher on my priority list.
Yeah, I wouldn't wait.
That's a strange thing to factor into your destination list is whether the place will be in the ocean or not.
All right. Yeah,
but beautiful place, and we will get there.
I'll stay in your same vein because on my list at number 4 is another place of the flying that we didn't actually get to fly into. But we flew by it twice, on the way down to Ocracoke and on the way back, which is the birthplace of aviation, First Flight Airport and the Wright Brothers Memorial there in Kitty Hawk. We did end up getting to go over for a very abbreviated visit. Because the park was closing, and boy, they're serious about what time they close, aren't they? Like they were basically chasing us off the property. But we, one of our guys who was there in a Cirrus, managed to fly in on his way back to Amelia Island. Michael Young. The rest of us drove, so we got to kind of park in this like parking lot up here, and then we walked the whole route and walked up to the memorial and took some photos and some video and stuff, which was really amazing. I would have liked to have had more time to go to like the museum and such, but it was a good experience. But I would love to land there. I just think that's kind of a place I would love to visit in an airplane.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately with your place in Kerala, it will inevitably happen. Did you fly on 4th of July?
I flew on the 5th of July, 6th, 5th. No, I can't remember if it was the 4th or the 5th. There were fireworks happening still, which was cool. But yeah, we did a night flight in the Cessna. Me and a buddy in the flying club went out and got all of our night landings.
Now you got to say which Cessna. We don't know.
Oh, sorry, the 172, 5.2 Lima. Me and this buddy would not try to fly in the 150, I don't think. Doesn't quite have the payload.
So you're night current?
I'm night current. Well, I still was. I had 6 days left before that one, and then we got our 3 in. Each of us got our 3 in. Like legit, like more than an hour after when we started. Because I actually went up to take the 150 out. We were going to go fly patterns together, like as a pair. But then I couldn't. I didn't feel like the suction was right. And I was like, I wouldn't normally care about that. I mean, I would have looked at it in the day and been like, okay, whatever. I don't care. But it was my first time flying that plane at night. And I thought, I'm not even going to take a chance of getting out here somewhere where I'm not sure where the horizon is or if I have a good attitude indicator. So I texted him and said, never mind, I can't fly. And he's like, stay there. I'm coming back for you. So he turned around and came back and landed. And I literally ran over, jumped in a running airplane. And we took off like 30 seconds later, and I shoved my seatbelt on. It was just like, let's go. He was flying.
James
obviously.
Bond.
I was just, it felt like that. I was like a spy. He picked me up at the intersection of the taxiway. It was pretty cool.
It's like you were fleeing the scene.
Exactly. Get me out of here.
Well, I guess it's nice to know though, ultimately, that you do have some kind of AHRS with ForeFlight.
That's right. That's right. I would have had a backup there. And that did cross my mind, but I also was thinking to myself, I've read stories that start similarly
right.
to that.
That's
and I'm
right.
like, I'm not going to start that chain of events right now. So, anyway, it ended up being fine. We went out the next day and checked it out. I don't know if I was just misreading it in the dark, trying to see that little green scale and the red light. I mean, some of that's a little, I may have been misreading it because I couldn't get it to misbehave the next day. We went up and checked it out. So
you're more comfortable generally at night now than.
Yeah, I went through a period where it was really hard. I had to really talk myself into it. But the more I do it, at least in familiar territory, I don't know how I'll feel when I start getting out places where I really don't know where I would go in the event of an emergency. But yeah, it's fine in the area that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah. Well, I thought that I would, beat the heat here on fly on the 4th at, sort of dusk. And it was so blistering hot. It's awful here right now. I'm so excited about the days I'm not flying now, right? Like tomorrow is going to be a heat index of 115 here or something. So there's just no point. But all right. So my number 3 is going to be so normcore, so regular, so everybody, of course. But I want to do the VFR corridor through Manhattan.
Oh, yeah, the Hudson River corridor. Yep.
Yeah. And, having lived in New York a couple of times in my life, and I think about the phases of my life, if this is this is probably the intentionality you're talking about that I have, which is really just wistful, artistic meandering. But the VFR corridor, when I've seen people when I first moved to New York City, it was 1995. I had a plastic fast map. Remember fast maps? They were just these laminated maps. You didn't have any. Anyway, that's how I navigated everything. And I was a 23-year-old kid with no money trying to figure it out in the 90s. And then I came back in 2007 and lived there from 2007 to 2011. Rode my bike I've ridden my bike over every bit of the 5 boroughs probably. And I've explored so much of it. And I'm just so intimately familiar with New York. And then to be able to think about the level, it's almost like every time I've revisited New York in some way in my life, it's been because I've grown as a person and accomplished more things or more perspective. And so I just feel like that would be the ultimate poetic thing. And also I think about how much my dad would just love to do that. And he was from New York. So anyway, yeah, VFR corridor all day. And I love I don't know if people do this all the time. It seems like a lot of people go up and then turn back and come back down the Hudson. but I want to do the thing. Like I can't even, it blows my mind in a post 9/11 world that you can just hang a right over Central Park and cut over to the East River and then work your way back. That blows my mind. I want to do that so bad.
Yeah, me too. There's somebody flying the corridor right now.
Let's call him.
Going up the Hudson River. And then there's another guy coming out back down the East River, back towards the Statue of Liberty, and a helicopter. I'm guessing 350 feet. I hope it's a helicopter. Yeah, it's a helicopter. Probably a sightseeing helicopter. But even at 8:20 on a Wednesday evening, there's VFR aircraft out doing the tour here. Lots of them.
Doesn't it kind of seem crazy that like post 9/11, it just seems like I just can't believe that that's. I don't know. I'm glad that it's still a possibility. Even when I was flying just over downtown Nashville on the 4th, and it's you just kind of think, God, like I know some, kind of Yahoo people that get pilot licenses. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like they're murderers or some crazy thing. I'm just saying, there's some, I don't know, people more on the edge of the rules.
Sure.
Or whatever. It just seems crazy that it's just kind of like, that's what people do. But anyway, I'm glad that it's a possibility. So yeah, VFR corridor, Manhattan all day. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So was that your number 3?
That was my number 3.
Yeah. So my number 3 is going to be a little vaguer, a little more vague. I have lost all control. Mine's gonna be a little bit more vague, and it's more of a general, like geographic area, maybe than a specific airport. But because I spent so much time in training, like before my private and even during and some after online flying, flight simulator, specifically with Pilot Edge, the service, the air traffic control service that's online, and they're on the kind of the California coast area. I would just like to go over and fly the busy airspace around California and the coast, San Diego, San Francisco, and just that area. There are so many cool little airports in that kind of California coast area. And there's also so many places to rent aircraft over there. That's something I really want to work on in the coming years, because we travel a reasonable amount. I've been to Vegas 20 times, and every time we go out there now, post pilot time, I'm thinking, man, I got to rent an airplane out here and do the Grand Canyon thing myself, fly to the canyon, and there's the Grand Canyon Airport. And you think, my God, there is terrain out there, but also it's all desert. So it's like you'll die of heat and scorpions before you'll like crash it into the forest and hit mountains like I deal with. But like, there's so many opportunities to do that, to just rent airplanes. And I'm getting close to that number. A lot of people have a 200-hour kind of minimum threshold, and I'm within 15 hours of that now. And so like, that's a big hurdle for just being able to go out and get checked out in a plane. One Dog Geek's asking now, like, how difficult is it to get checked out? And it varies tremendously by place that you do it. But in most cases, it's just like a checkout flight. It's not like a check ride, right? But they'll have you go out and do the basic, like, maneuvers and show the stalls and slow flight and steep turns and a couple landings and takeoffs, just to make sure you know how to operate the airplane. But, can you
imagine if you were a person doing checkout flights, like you would, it's sort of like a minor form of a DPE, but you would know in probably 30 seconds, It's interesting. So. You would know real quick whether somebody should be flying this plane or not. By the way, I'm not trying to have an hours off, but I was just, once you said you have 185.
Now we're going to do it again. Let's see. Let me pull up my logbook. We did this last podcast.
Everything.
Too. Everybody just hold on a minute.
So relevant.
No, I lied. You're ahead of me. I have 180.4. I said inside 20, didn't I? Or to say 15. Well, I'm inside 20 hours. I have 180.4.
All right.
Where are you?
At 175.0.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, right there. That's my number 3.
Not a competition.
That's right.
But it's a competition. It's a race to 200. Maybe that's like a, sort of podcasty promotional thing we should do.
I'm going to work on it. If you challenge me to it, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to get, I have 4 hours next week for sure in the Cherokee going to Newport News and back. plus a sightseeing flight down there. So
Hey, look,
I'll have 4 next week.
right after we get off this podcast, I'm going up here and just flying in the pattern until
What are you drinking?
Like, oh boy.
So you're not then.
In 8 hours.
Cheers. I'll see you up there. That is a joke. That is a joke.
Oh man. So all right. So I'll get to my my number 2, and this is, again, where I get a little weird, because I'm the weird guy, right? That's my role. That's my shtick here, is being the weird artistic guy. So my number 2 destination, and we've touched on some of this, and we have a previous episode that people should check out. That's titled something along the lines of sort of like, you've got your private pilot license, now what? Or, something, because there's a lot of, you get so focused on studying and training and getting to the finish line of the check ride. And there definitely is this period of, in storytelling, you would call, in film or whatever, it'd be like the part of the story that's kind of the denouement, like you kind of get to the end sort of dynamic kind of calming down, and you kind of look around like, what was I even doing all this for? Like, where am I going? What am I doing? So we did talk about some of this stuff on that episode. People should check that out. And I think there's actually another wave of that kind of happens maybe around about the time where we are now, because you really want there to be a destination and some sort of goal or objective. But I'll say that I've really just been enjoying, I think you have been too, just getting in the plane and doing whatever, man.
Exactly.
It's just such a privilege and a pleasure. But anyway, so my number 2 is to view the Roden Crater, which is northeast of Flagstaff, Arizona. So I suppose it could be combined a bit with sort of some Grand Canyon type of things. But the Roden Crater is a giant kind of mountainous crater in the middle of nowhere, Arizona. And so the reason why that crater is special is because there's an artist by the name of James Turrell who's done installation type of art at probably your museum in your town. He's a very prolific, very well-regarded artist, James Turrell. He works with light. So he'll create these spaces that light comes into in interesting ways and all this. But without getting too weird about it, he's also a pilot. And back in the 60s and 70s, he had this vision of his biggest life work being this kind of finding a crater and then putting all these kind of chambers in it and all this to be able to accelerate and decelerate and work with light in all these completely magnificent ways, and this really experiential thing. And like I said, he's a pilot. He was flying all around there, sorting it all out. And that's how he scouted the location for it. And then he's been working on it since the 70s. And it's almost to the point where it's open to the public, but it's not quite open to the public. But I think a few people have been able to get in there for various things. But the Roden Crater by James Turrell, definitely go look it up or check it out. It's the most outrageous thing, I think, in probably in the world. It's unbelievable. So I just really am interested in the idea that I would love to retrace his sort of flight path to what it must have looked like for him to be looking for this place to do your greatest life's work. And, he found it from the air. What would that have looked like?
That's amazing.
Roden Crater, check it out. And I'll spare you all the other artistic nonsense.
Awesome. All right. Number 2, this one's getting a little weird, probably, and somewhat dangerous. I want to go to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
In a small airplane. I've watched a bunch of videos on that too. I mean, obviously that's a risky one. But people do it all the time, much like out in Vegas and other places. There's places down there that there's so many airplanes in Florida too, to rent. And there's places that specialize in these trips, that you rent a plane and take it. They have the safety gear. You can just rent, you don't have to buy all the stuff if you're not doing a lot of water
rent the
stuff.
Raft.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of, it's part of the rental package. But I would just love to come over here. I've watched a ton of guys on YouTube do that trip, to various airports over there on the Bahamas. I think that would be super fun if you're vacationing in Florida to take a day or two and just do that. don't know what it costs. I haven't really looked that far into it, but I think that would be a fun one for me. That's number 2 for me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's books written on just that quest, and it really is kind of the holy grail. By the way, Prescott Flyer asked, possible topic for a future podcast: long trip planning using FBOs, arranging transportation, lodging, securing the airplane, etc.
That's
such
one.
a good. It really is. Please make a note of that, or I will. It's such a strange thing that you kind of just have to figure it out. It's sort of like, I don't know. There's a lot we can offer though from what we've learned so far. So that's just a great idea. But it is sort of this weird, you're training, but you're not getting any of that tribal knowledge that is the actuality of going places and what that really is actually made of materially.
That's
like,
right.
I mean, you definitely, like when you first get your license, you land places and you're like, I have no idea where to park, or like, is it okay if I just park here? I don't know.
Right.
It's a bunch of stuff like that. So that's a great one.
That's a very good topic. Thank you for that.
You want to give me my number 1? Is it time for my number 1?
I think so. I better get ready because I do have stuff to share for this one. This is in full disclosure, this is the one you did share with me in advance. Just by have to have some media ready to show.
And the number 1 destination is the nearest airport to Ben Singer. No, the Sage Steakhouse Airport. No, shout out to the Sage. He was going to come up here this week, and it didn't quite work out with the weather. It's one of those things where it's bad weather every day at 3:00. So anyway, my number 1 is also a bit of an leaving the United States destination. This is probably one of those. I don't know if you guys remember the episode we had where we had the ferry pilot carry on, and it was this. He would laugh at some of our sort of loftiest goals here, but
right, for sure he would.
But mine is Fogo Island. It might be pronounced Fogo Island, but I think it's Fogo Island. And this is in Newfoundland.
Well, how do you get there? Is there land?
You have to rent something that says Red Bull on it. No, I'm just kidding. So there are charter flights that go there, and all that. But this island, which by the way, ironically enough, flat earthers consider it one of the 4 corners of the world.
Oh, good.
So
good for them.
So that makes it kind of fun, but it's just an incredible. It's sort of like last stop before Greenland kind of thing. Look at that place though. Like that's the hotel you can go and stay. So anyway, it's kind of got this Icelandic kind of vibe, right? It's super modern architecture interspersed into this completely natural kind of oceanside rocky environment. There's a lot of old Irish and old culture there that is still kind of pure. It's sort of like an immigration stop that kind of got frozen in time. But It's just such a beautiful place. It's definitely a rarefied destination. And the reason why, when I was talking at the beginning, we were talking about sort of the criteria for these places. I mean, of course, this is beautiful. I mean, look, it's got icebergs, it's got, all kinds of things. But the criteria for this one was unique in the sense that it's sort of my motivational destination for getting my instrument rating, because there's no way in hell I would ever try to go to that place and not have an instrument rating. So to me, it's like now I've got something direct that I've put, a carrot that I'm dangling in front of myself. That's like the ultimate destination, but I've got to have an instrument rating and I've got to get that done, which, still working on the ground school sitch, working on it. It's been a little busy, but I should be able to take the test here, and written test in a month or two. And then we'll get on with maybe the training when it's not 1,000 degrees outside. So,
for sure.
So anyway, that's it. That's my number 1. Now I'd love to hear yours, sir, and then we can get into the chat and see what people
mine
got.
Mine is still technically United States, but it's not continental. Well, I mean, it's Alaska.
Yeah.
Specifically Homer, Alaska. I I followed, then worked with and became friends with Chris Palmer, who runs Angle of Attack. He has a flight school up here at Homer, Alaska. And some of the scenery that Aaron is in his videos, just from flight training with students and whatnot, is just unbelievably incredible. It's just kind of south of Anchorage. So there is a commercial way to get there, down here kind of in this corner, but just just in their general area, the scenery and the places to go and the things to do are pretty incredible. And so,
it's not like you're going to get there and be like, oh, I thought it was be bigger.
Right. Yeah. You know what you're getting, right? It's
it's
exactly.
Gonna be amazing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I can't believe how disappointing this is. I mean, just look, it's just, yeah. So I would love to go up to Alaska and do some stuff there. There's other stuff, he's got a whole series of videos on float, training. There's Homer, skis and floats. I can't remember the name of the place. There's a place up here that they all do their float training. And it's crazy to watch. I don't know that I would do that. I mean, I don't know that I ever have intentions of being a float plane pilot, but it's cool nonetheless. There's all kinds of stuff. It might be fun to go up and do it, just spend an hour.
The guy from West Virginia doesn't want to fly floats.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you want to build skills that you can maintain. That's the thing. You got to have enough respect for the skills you're learning to know that they need to be maintained. Yeah. So, maybe, I don't know, is there a reservoir there, or like you got the river?
Oh yeah, there's definitely stuff around here, but Cheat Lake, I don't know if you can land on Cheat Lake. I don't know. I've never done the math. That's a pretty good list. That's 10 pretty respectable places. And I have seen a lot more flying through the comments that I think are going to be pretty good. So I think we start at the beginning of the list. It's a long one, and just kind of just knock out a bunch of these. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking back through. So everybody jump in and add your top 5 so that we have them all at the top. Let's see here. One Dull Geek said, oh yeah, his hometown airport. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Fond du Lac, Oshkosh, Catalina Island. Yeah. That's a good list.
Yeah. The Oshkosh thing, I'm sort of on the fence about.
Oh man.
I mean, I would obviously I think it depends on who's with me.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I would prefer it to be another capable pilot, or at least, a more capable pilot probably. And I would like it to, this is no slight to any of my friends or family, but I can't imagine, being the only pilot and bringing a bunch of non-pilots or one or two non-pilots, whatever, through that. That would be kind of extra stress. So you have to really situate yourself. Yeah.
Fowler 28379 says first flight with landing for sure. Number 1.
Yeah. I mean, we've watched people land there, and that was pretty good.
Yeah, we did.
It'd be better to land there. Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's like going back to the womb of flight. Yeah.
Air J says, hey, everyone. Number 1, Catalina Island. Number 2, New York. See, Brian, that's following your trail. And then number 3, Canada.
Canada. That's like one step away from saying Earth, Air J. Yeah, we give us something specific.
Lots of options. Leaving the door. I'm going
to write that down on my list now. That's going on my list. Canada.
Anywhere in Canada. Check your insurance policies before you leave the United States.
Right.
Some don't travel. Bearded Aviator, Key West, the Bahamas, Oshkosh, Sun and Fun.
Do you think it's something where Sun and Fun is sort of like the junior varsity Oshkosh, where you go there and try to do that one first and then go to Oshkosh?
Probably. It's getting big though too. It's not Oshkosh big, but it's getting pretty busy.
I mean, you can land on dots and stuff, right? That's really all it is. Everybody just wants to land on a dot.
I got to look one up real quick.
All right.
Because Muhammad says, here, you pronounce that while I look it up.
It looks like a Bjork album title.
It does. Oh, I did find it though.
It's got the word fjord in it. So it's Lusafjordur. I know what a fjord is.
Fjordur.
Dennis Kern, I can see K4R9 Dauphin Island from my house. Looking forward to landing there someday. Currently a student pilot with whopping 2 hours. Well, hey, Dennis Kern, you're 2 hours. You got 2 hours behind you. You'll never have to do those hours again. You're only going to get better. And if you can see it from your house, and that's a great reminder to keep going. That's awesome. I'm glad you're here. So Lusafjordur.
I found it, but it looks cool. Let's see if I can make it show up here.
Where is that?
It's in wherever we are here. It's in I don't even know. Well, I don't even know what country this is. Where are we?
Iceland?
Everything's written in words I can't. Yes, it is Iceland.
All right. So
That's
I was right with the
Brian.
Icelandic impetus there. Good.
That looks cool. Yeah, right on the water, right in the water, but below this, looks like crazy steep ridges and
anywhere in Iceland would be absolutely ridiculous.
Heck yeah. Fantastic. Found it on.
I haven't even really allowed myself to think about flying, beyond Canada, Mexico, United States. So what else do we have here?
There's just so many places to see. There's just so many places to see. You could never get everywhere you wanted to go. I
love that the sage. Sorry, this is totally not related. The sage I just saw that he said he's got 753.4 hours. I love that he's still doing tenths. Even when he's approaching 1,000 hours,
it's
I love that. But anyway, but yes, so Arizona seems like kind of a no-brainer across the board.
A lot of people talking about Cedar Key.
Oh yeah,
Smokey Bear Air, Ben Singer, all talking about Cedar Key.
Brian wants to be alone. 3 of 5 are isolated islands. Fowler 28379. You could not be more correct.
Get me away.
For me, there's nothing makes me more scared in life than a crowd of people that are all interested in one thing, that all agree on one thing enthusiastically. I go the other way when I see groups of people enthusiastically agreeing with each other about anything. To me, it's an indicator that something's about to go south. Just get out of there. So yes, 3 out of 5 are islands.
Ivy says Niagara Falls, Hudson Corridor, Asheville, and Johnny Depp's private island.
Oh, what's the airport code for Johnny Depp's private island?
That is a great question.
Wow. Yeah, there's another one just near Asheville that I want to go to that's a grass strip. I have one of my dad's old log books, and for whatever reason, he was flying out of some little tiny grass strip out of there for a while. Whatever plane he was flying was based there, clearly. Anyway, so there's a little place near Asheville, and I've got some family there. I would love to. I don't know why I haven't flown into there yet. I've flown right by it.
Wow.
But it's the Smoky Mountains. It's pretty amazing, and it's very doable. It's not like, I don't know, whatever. It's not the Rockies. It's not some,
right.
Like, oh, you better have all these oxygen tanks or something.
Well, that's cool. That's pretty solid list, man. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing all those in the chat. That was excellent. I think it will be good to come back and look at later, like you had said earlier, Brian. Like, it's just a good archive of these kind of ideas, these ideas to have and things to come back to.
Hey, so what are you working on right now? What's your next thing?
So you mentioned earlier the video I released for patrons this week, which was part 2 of our fly, and it'll come out publicly on Saturday this week. And it is part 2 of our trip where we flew down to Ocracoke Island. And there's a fair amount of your footage in it, at least at the front end. We kind of compiled some stuff from some other people and put a piece together. But I leave off there at our lunch and when we like hang out there and before we head home. And I leave out a big part of the story because I'm hopeful that you're working on something of your part of that trip.
Yeah, no, so I am working on it. It's funny because the way that I make the things that I make is I write. It's just me writing in a Google Doc. And it's been hard because there's a lot of ways to kind of shape the narrative or the recap or whatever you want to call it. And what is it that I really want to focus on? Because there's certain things that you're always challenged with, like, what do I just want to catalog for myself and my own interpretations of what happened and just kind of catalog a particular memory and time and perception about things versus, can I even vaguely try to make this interesting for other people?
Right, right.
Because there's a fine line, right, between the things that are really interesting and important to you. But I tend to just do that anyway. So anyway, I'm just writing it. But I've been gathering footage. You sent me some radio audio. One Dull Geek said he's going to send me some stuff. But I think I've got kind of everything that I need. It's going to be, my friend that I brought with me, so I didn't film any of the flights. So I don't have, it's not going to be from a sort of flight recap kind of perspective. It's going to be photographs and just assembled things that support whatever it is that my narrative is there. So anyway, I will have it done. It's kind of like once I get the writing done, then the video takes no time to put together. And then I should have it done by Friday. That was not
there was no intention of trying to pressure that. I was just
I'm working on it.
Because I debated what to do with it. I mean, because I had the same debate. Like, I didn't know how much I wanted to go into that, or even the return flight back. Like, I will probably do something with the flight back that day because it was intense in its own way. Like, there were a lot of things that we were. I don't want to spoil all of it for everybody who hadn't heard the story, but there was a lot of moving parts to that, and
the part where you had to jump out with the parachute and all that.
Yeah, let's not oversell and disappoint. See, I'm all the other way, like undersell and then surprise when it's better than they think. But yeah, you can check all that out. So the one that's coming now is available for patrons now on my Patreon at midlife, patreon.com/midlifepilot, and then on the YouTube channel, the video will be out on Saturday, and you can also check out Brian's both of those things on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, and I've got about 50 videos that probably no one's seen. So if you go to my thing, you might find a lot of other things. By the way, Ben Singer, this is great. Do any of you have any airports near you that are your nemesis airports? There's one near me that I can't pull the trigger on. Short runway at the base of a mountain, 9 Alpha 0. That is such a great. Of course, the Sage is already, he's out in front of us looking for, he's trying to take on the Darth Vader of runways.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that looks here, let me just that looks exciting.
Maybe the Sage needs to get a 150 with 40 degrees and a dream.
Oh, I think his can probably get out of there. He'll just outmotor it. I mean, in fact, if he rotates far enough, he'll climb out like a helicopter. His thing will just kind of go straight up in the air.
His plane is sort of like being in, what, when you're a kid and you're in your own family car and your family doesn't really have a lot of money, and then you go hang out with your friends who have more money than you, and you get in their parents' car to get a ride home, and you realize like, oh, this is kind of like what a real car is like. Right. That's what I felt like when I got in the Sage's plane. It was right. I was like, oh, this is what the airplane that people have been talking about so much. That's awesome. Right. This is a totally different vibe. Your plane too, actually, is like that. It's just about having more horsepower. I think
that makes a big difference.
More, I don't know, certain.
Well, it was fun. This was a good topic choice.
Yeah, man.
Be sure to join us next for episode 19, recording on July 20th, 8:00 p.m. Eastern. Special guest RH from the world famous podcast Opposing Bases will be our guest. And get your questions ready. If you've got air traffic control questions, line them up, because we'll spend an hour talking about things with him. It should be a really good time. Looking forward to that.
I'm so glad that that's worked out. That's going to be amazing. And yeah, so thanks everybody for hanging out with us. It's awesome. We don't take it for granted that we're kind of just kicking around doing this podcast thing, and that people actually come along the ride with us. It's pretty awesome.
It is great. Thanks again for the podcast. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks for episode 19 here on the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We'll see you later.